Okay, no doubt you are among the millions of Americans who are getting more and more excited about tuning in on a regular basis to your favorite podcast. The great thing about them is that pretty much whatever is interesting you at the moment, you can find a podcast to support it. So if you are interested in celebrating first responders in this country who won't call themselves heroes, but we all know they are, then listen up, because we're very happy this morning to welcome David Leith, otherwise known as Super Dave, and he has a podcast called Hero Academy Podcast by Super Dave. So good to see you this morning.
It's great to see you too.
I think it's interesting. You and I were chatting, and I'll let you talk a little bit with us about your role as a New York detective. But you did this podcast to honor and recognize these men and women who you do classify as heroes, but they themselves don't want to be named that.
Yes, I've met many medical professionals, many military who said, please refrain from calling me a hero. And I get it. They don't want that title. They feel as if they're just doing their job. And I feel like I need to celebrate their stories.
So you were telling me that as a general rule, if you go into the work of a first responder, you're doing it to serve, not for the glory of it or the credit. So you yourself are a New York detective. What compelled you to go into the police force?
For me, it was it's everything surrounding my family. At a young age, I had a sense of being a protector for my mother, and I experienced loss of my younger brother due to a violent incident. So that led me into the police department. I wanted to also support my young family. So I felt like it was a very honorable career and a very secure career.
So where did you get the name Super Dave? Is that something you got from family or from your friends in the force?
So I got the name Super Dave actually from the podcast. It was me striving to be the best version of myself, and also it was on brand with the Hero Academy. So I feel like it's a fun thing to say. Everyone smiles when they say it. And I also grew up with Dave Osborne, aka Bob Einstein, who was the original Super Dave, and I am Super Dave 2.0.
So you mentioned it is the Academy, it is Hero Academy Podcast. So that implies that you like to take what you've learned and help other people with it. You have a coaching program, is that right, Dave?
I do. I teach first responders how to use their story and create a brand around themselves, such as like what David Goggins has done, and many others. Rip from Forks Over Knives, he created a brand around himself being a firefighter, and many others have done the same thing.
So when you are talking with these first responders, are they people, Dave, from all over the country? Or I know you're on Long Island. Are they mostly in your own backyard?
No, I talk to first responders all around the country. I love connecting with people from California to Hawaii, and even outside of the country. I've connected with a few people from the UK and Australia now. So I've connected with people all over the world. There is an entire population of first responders out there, people who have served in the military, people who are paramedics and firemen and police officers and nurses. I consider them all one big family, and I love speaking with them and hearing their stories.
I guess one of the fun things about a podcast, kind of the format of our show too, it's a long conversation that we get to have with our guests, not as long as yours.
Yes.
But for the listener, it's almost like eavesdropping on somebody's
Yes.
conversation. You can easily listen and learn some things along the way.
Yes, and I always like to find out what people are doing on the side of their career or outside of their profession, and I love to find out how they combated that inevitable burnout once they reach 20 years or 25 years, and what they transitioned into. I love to find out what people do after retirement or what their plan is after retirement. I love hearing those stories and seeing what people are up to.
And I would imagine that the muscle memory of your life, if you spend 20 years as a first responder in any of those fields, to walk away from that and not still
Yes.
find a way to give back would just be a life you wouldn't know how to live.
Yes, many people feel that they cannot walk away or they don't know what they'll do afterwards. And I feel like I have a solution to help them to continue to serve in a way that feels genuine.
So what do your kids say about it?
They're excited. They're my biggest fans. I love my boys. My boys are all grown. I started young, so that was the other reason why I became a police officer initially, is because I had a young family, and I wanted to support them and be there for them and break the stereotypes. So that's why I joined the police department.
Well, that is so great for you. So I think I was told that when you end each of your podcasts, you have kind of a standard question that you ask the guest. Is that right?
I do. One of the questions that I ask is, "What is your power?" Because I want to know what you believe is your strongest ability, and I know mine is the ability to tell my story and affect another human's heart. But I also want to know what they consider a hero, and if they had a comic book superpower, what that comic book superpower would be, because I just love Marvel and DC, and I love origin stories, and I love hearing what people would want to embody. So that's where the name Super Dave comes from. I know I don't have any actual superpowers, but it's exciting to imagine actually having some kind of power.
And you know, it's interesting that you should ask them that question, because I think, just like you said, anybody who goes into this line of work really isn't thinking about themselves much.
Yes.
I was asked a question recently about character traits of mine, and I really struggled to answer the question. And I realized later that probably is not a good thing, because when you can be aware of who you are, you then know how to use who you are in a more effective way.
If you know yourself, so know thyself, if you know yourself, you become unstoppable, because you can be more authentic and you can be more vulnerable with people, and you can be true to who you really are. Anytime someone asks me a question that I get stumped by, I write it down and I think on it, and I keep several journals all around me. I have all these journals. So I have all of these things that I write down, and I go around my thoughts whenever questions come up, like, what is your ability? What makes you great at what you do? And I know that after interviewing thousands of criminals and being in special victims and interviewing children, so just interviewing people from all different spans of life, I'm a good interviewer. I know that I am. And if I could turn the tables on you, I would ask you, what is your superpower?
I think these days, I think your superpower might change a little bit, but I think my superpower, see, I don't know how to answer. I'd have to get a journal and write it down for a while.
So the next time that someone asks you, what is your best ability or what is your superpower, it'll just roll off the tongue and you'll have it.
I will try to do my homework, Super Dave.
All right.
And in the meantime, we can find you, what, on Apple and Spotify?
Yes, ma'am. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, all of the major podcasting platforms. And if anyone wants to find me on social media, they can go to my website, davidleet.com. All of my social media is there.
All right, you keep on asking those questions. That's the fun of life.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been spectacular.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.